In the early 2000s, Zimbabwe made a deal with the devil. Back then, the country was ruled by Robert Mugabe, a corrupt, ruthless dictator. His policies invited sanctions from the US and Europe. Zimbabwe was cut off from the world. So what did Mugabe do? In 2003, he unveiled the Looking East policy. He found a willing partner in China. And since then, Beijing has flooded Zimbabwe with loans and investments. Look at some of the numbers here. Bilateral trade was $190 million in the year 2002. Today, it is $1.3 billion. The Chinese have penetrated every sector from mining to agriculture and even media. More than 80 Chinese companies operate in Zimbabwe. Together, they have invested upwards of $10 billion. But Chinese loans are always backhanded. They come packaged with deceit. Almost 2 decades later, Zimbabwe is realizing this. You see, China did not just bring money. They brought their abhorrent work culture as well. Local employees are treated like slaves. They don't get proper wages, no compensation for injuries, gas leaks and factory defects are allowed to fester.
Workers are brutalized every day. We get many reports, and they don't want those issues to be attended to. So they push back every time we raise issues. They push back and accuse those who are raising issues for bullying them. And that has been the behavior of them every time. They pretend sometimes, if you speak to them, they pretend not to understand the language. But they understand the laws. They employ very professional people in their HR departments. But cases of work deficits are plenty within the Chinese investment across the country.
That was the General Secretary of Zimbabwe's Congress Trade Union. What he described is a template. Chinese companies are refusing to take responsibility. Instead, they're accusing trade unions of bullying them. Well, in fairness, expecting China to take the blame is wishful thinking. So tonight, we will expose them with evidence. Pictures from a Chinese operation in Zimbabwe. This is the scene at a ceramic tile factory run by Sunny Yi Feng. The workers are fed up with the mistreatment. So they have mobilized outside the factory. What are their grievances? The factory uses a particular type of chemical. Some of the female workers have been collapsing on the job because of it. Get what the Chinese officers are doing about this. Picking up the collapsed workers with forklifts. This is true. The video evidence is on your screen. Instead of offering treatment, workers are loaded on machinery and wheeled out. Rock bottom was 3 floors up. Here is another picture from the factory. This one shows the average meal given to the workers. They describe it as horrible porridge and cabbage with no oil. This soggy abomination is what a worker gets after toiling endlessly in Chinese factories. What do we call this? Forced labor, slave labor, or just typical Chinese exploitation? Does the government in Zimbabwe know what is happening? All indications are they do. Health inspectors and Labour Department officials have seen these pictures, so why has there been no action? Because when you strike a deal with the devil, you pledge your conscience. The government is indebted to China. They cannot afford to antagonize Beijing. A string of similar incidents has emerged in Zimbabwe, and all of these incidents remain unaddressed. In 2019, miners went on strike over low wages. They also wanted PPE kits while going down mine shafts. The response still awaited. And then last year, a Chinese mine owner shot 2 of his workers. Why? Because they were demanding unpaid wages. The Chinese embassy called it an isolated incident. But that's far from the truth. Zimbabwean workers are systematically abused, and their tormentors are their Chinese bosses. Question is, will things change? At the moment, it looks unlikely. In 2018, Zimbabwe's president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, was invited to Beijing. He signed new deals with China. Today, Zimbabwe's map is dotted by Chinese projects. They're upgrading the Robert Mugabe International Airport. They're building a $3 billion coal plant in Sengwa. They're refurbishing Zimbabwe's largest power station, and this year they opened an iron ore mine and a carbon steel plant. To put it simply, China is sucking the sovereignty out of Zimbabwe. Their GDP is $20 billion. Chinese investments are worth $10 billion. When these Chinese loans come due, what do you think will happen? Asset transfer. Zimbabwe will have to surrender strategic assets to China. This is China's playbook all over the world, exploiting local employees and workers and then trapping helpless nations in debt. We've given you the evidence. Now it's for the international community to act. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.